Hi, this is Roger Moore, and you're listening to James Bond Radio.
Hello, and welcome to James Bond Radio. This is our review of No Time to Die, where today we're right near the end. We're going to look at the climatic confrontation between James Bond and Safin and everything that happens thereafter. My name's Chris Wright, and today I'm joined by my good buddy, my fellow Bond in arms. It's Mr. Tom Sears. How you doing, dude? You all right?
I'm doing well, man. It's exciting times to get through to the end, because if anything, this is the biggest discussion point, isn't it? Is should it have ended like this, and so on and so forth. A lot of people bang against the idea. A lot of people on board with the idea. So it'll be again. I think that if you had to boil it all down, that's probably the number one discussion point for everybody involved, isn't it?
I think it has to be, because there are people who outright dislike the film in all its entirety, and there are people that say, I love 2 hours 30 minutes of this film, or 2 hours 35, whatever, and it's that last little bit that a lot of people aren't on board with. People say, oh, it's not Fleming, or Fleming would never do this, or etc. etc. But equally, like you said, there are people that love it and think it's great and a perfect way to round off sort of Craig's tenure. So that's something obviously we'll get to. So we'll go back to where we last left Bond. So he's inside the factory now. Bond he's inside the sort of laboratory above the factory. He's with Nomi. He orders the scientists. They kind of break in there, orders the scientists into a corner, and Obruchev is there. He tries to escape. And Nomi does that pretty cool kick where she puts her hand on the table and sort of kicks him down, boy, and then takes him out. What do you think of that bit? I mean, the kick I think is cool. Do you like the line, or are you not sure? You think it's all right?
It's all right.
I've got Halle Berry vibes.
Yeah,
on that
I know.
line.
In
all honesty,
I could hear Jinx saying it.
Yeah,
it's all right. She carries it off better than Jinx would have done.
Yeah,
100%. But it's all right. I'm not overly offended by it, but at the same time, I'm not excited by it.
Not excited, no. Okay, so Bond, he basically is planting a lot of bombs around the lab. This is where they sort of realise how many thousands of vials are being stored. They check on this computer and see a simulation of showcasing sort of how deadly the spread of Heracles would be, how many millions of victims there would be as well. Obruchev, while they're doing this, mentions he has big plans. This is where Nomi sort of has had enough, and Bond tells her to shut him up, and she rams him with a gun. Oh, my nose, my nose. And then basically they look from the laboratory over the factory and sort of realise, okay, they've got to destroy this whole facility. It's one big manufacturing plant for Heracles. Bond at this point tells Nomi to blow it all to shit if he doesn't come back. Okay, she replies saying that they don't have enough explosives for that. Bond says, yeah, but they don't know that. So what do you think to that exchange? So Bond says, blow it all to shit if I don't come back. Yeah, but we don't have enough explosives for that. But they don't know that.
I guess it's a bluff that... Yeah, I don't know.
It's a bit of a... Basically, when I first heard that, I was a bit like, well, surely you need to blow it all up anyway. So it's a bit strange. But Rory had a good point where he said that basically he thought it was just a case of if they saw some bombs going off and just enough to see things going up in smoke, all the guards and workers would have just fled. So rather than taking out the whole facility, maybe that was part of it.
Yeah.
Now, this is another one that's quite a scene that's up for debate a bit. So this is where Madeline is with Primo, who has instructions to make her drink the tea. Again, this is a bit of a... I remember yesterday's episode, you suggested perhaps this could have been in the sort of inverted volcano set type thing, or the sort of temple set. Whereas here, it's a bit nondescript, isn't it? I suppose it was an ex-military base, so I guess it does look like that, but it is kind of a nondescript room. And it's large for the kind of scene that they're doing, where she's just sat at a table. So Madeline's with Primo basically is telling her that she's got to drink the tea. That's what Safin wants. Madeline says that this tea can blind people. Okay, so he comes over and basically she chucks the tea on into his face, runs off, and manages to get out and locks Primo inside. So what, in your mind, were your thoughts on this, in particular, sort of Madeline's use of the tea and what you think the tea actually was?
Well, my take on it is that she's bluffing, and he's obviously only got one eye left, so he's twitchy about perhaps losing that. And it's a bluff to make him freak out so she can get away.
Yeah, exactly what I thought, yeah.
Yeah, and the tea itself is I imagine that's the tea Safin was talking about that makes you do as you're told. So I guess it's some kind of sedative like tea where you just,
makes you subservient and infused with the same plant. Yeah, that's exactly how I pictured it. I think there's some people who are a bit confused, like, was she telling the truth? But how come Primo was okay later on? But no, I think the tea was the one that was Safin wanted her to drink so she would, become subservient to him, and she just used that as a distraction to play on Primo, and obviously managed to escape. So yeah, agree with you on that one. So now here it is. Bond goes to see Safin. Safin, while he's in the laboratory, Safin told him to come and see him. Obruchev pointed up. So now Bond, he's got his the big sort of machine gun thing. He's walking up the slope. Quite a few guards everywhere with guns aimed on him. The set, I do think the set does look cool. I know the whole idea of the Garden of Death would have been great as well if they had their sort of chat there, so to speak. But I do like the look of the set. I think it is kind of got the Dr. No, You Only Live Twice vibes going on. You've got the sort of miniature garden to one side. You've got the low table. I love the way Safin's kind of kneeling, like he's sitting on his knees. He's got his kimono. It is very sort of Japanese style. And as we mentioned previously, he's got Matilda next to him, and he knows that he can use her against Bond. This is like he mentioned the insurance for Madeline, but this is also insurance for Bond, having Matilda at his side. And there's that moment where Bond drops the main gun that he's got, and then Safin tells him to chuck his firearm as well. But before he does it, he chucks that cushion up, light as a feather, and then the guards obviously blast it open, and then Bond then chucks away his sidearm. So there's a lot of really good exchanges in this scene. I think I've kind of listed a few different bits of dialogue. A lot of it is from memory, so please forgive me if it's not in the right order or there's some bits that aren't quite right. But there is quite a lot of great exchanges between the two. But before we get to that, what are your thoughts on the set and this scene in general?
Set's great, very Ken Adam. It's in my mind, man. The idea of Ken Adams' visual stylings is Bond. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, if you don't have that, it's because no other film series has that vibe to it, does it? Because it's Ken Adam. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, he worked on other films, but you know what I'm saying. It's like, it's very, when you think of a Ken Adam set, it's always a Bond one that you think of, isn't it?
Totally.
And the Mission Impossible doesn't have that, so it's a very unique Bondian flavor. And I think when you don't have a Ken Adams style something going on, I think we're the poorer for it. And I think at some point, you don't have to do the whole thing, but at some point, I feel like there should be. I mean, if I'm honest, I want every Bond villain's base to be a bit Ken Adam-y in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want it would be lovely to have that flavor in every single Bond film, just because that visual thing to me is Bond when you go back to the roots of everything. So I like the room. The scene's cool. I suppose this is the closest we get to the classic villain speech, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
We have a mechanic in this scene that we've never had before, which is obviously Bond's child, which is absolutely brand new material. That's like, crazy that something new and crazy that we've never had to even consider in the world of Bond before. So that's
film
new.
World, yeah.
In the film world, of course, yeah. I tell you what, I'm very uncomfortable with.
Yeah,
is the way he does. He's like, "I'm so sorry," and I'm like, no. I don't like it. That makes me feel very uncomfortable. I know why he's doing it. It's obviously a fake out, but when I think of my Bond, right? I think of my boy Sean. I think of my boy George, Roger, Tim, Pierce. None of them would have done this.
No.
And for me, I don't want to see Bond on his hands and knees doing that.
Not even if it gave him the opportunity to get his gun. Or whatever.
I see what he's doing and I see why he's doing it and all the rest of it. I just think there's a cooler way of doing it. Do you know what I mean?
What is it?
I guess raising an eyebrow.
Yeah. Unzipping his fly and then getting the bullet, revolver point out.
I don't have anything off the top of my head, but
no.
I'm sure there's a way you could have done it without him doing that bit.
Or even ending up in that position, but just having different type of dialogue or a different style to actually get down there or something.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you at that particular moment. It seems a bit too much. And if I'm Safin and I've got Matilda next to me and I'm seeing Bond do that, I'm like, well, I know this is
What's
this
going
isn't
on here?
it's a bit too fishy. I think he could have styled it out a lot better. I think the fact he went down to cover himself so he could get the gun out is fine, but the way he did it definitely could have been styled out better than on screen. So I totally agree with you on
I mean,
one.
maybe he stood there with his gun up in the air like this. His hands are in the air. He's still got a gun in his hand. Safin says, put the gun on the ground. And instead of throwing it on the ground, he goes down very slowly, puts the gun down and then whips out the other one. You know what I mean? Something like that. Don't like I don't want to see that from my Bond, man. And I've still been having a few back and forth with Brian about it and about the whole film, obviously. Yeah. And I think him and I land on very similar pages of what we like about Bond and what excites us about Bond. Even though he's a Timmy man primarily and Timmy's at the bottom of my list. But in terms of the little things that you see from Bond, you're like, yeah, I like that. Dobson and I have very similar things that light our fires. And that is definitely not one of them. You know, I want to see Bond be cool, not, but again, it's a similar thing. It's like the clown suit in Octopussy. He wore it because he had to, and it made sense in the location. So all that applies. I just don't like it.
No, that's fair enough. I think that's fair enough. Well, what we'll do then, let's go through some of the exchanges, some of the lines said, and you sort of say what ones you like, what you're not sure about, and stuff like that. So I'll start with the first one. So this is Safin. James Bond. License to Kill, history of violence, in love with Madeline Swan. I could be speaking to my own reflection. So what do you think about that? Obviously, in love with Madeline Swan, I could be speaking to my own reflection. So he's saying that he is similarly, does that mean he's in love with Madeline? Is he infatuated with Madeline? Or does this go back to that whole saviour thing of how he saved him when she was here?
This is one of the questions I have. So this is one of those things that I think was a plot strand that was either sort of half abandoned or just needed beefing up a bit more, because I struggle to work out where he's in love with Madeline Swan. You know what I mean? Like, the weird, creepy obsession for keeping the hair strand, that's one thing. But I don't know. It's never really clear about what he even wants Madeline or even indeed Matilda for in my book. So I don't know. But he obviously is. So License to Kill, well, he doesn't have one of those. History of Violence, he definitely has that. In love with Madeline Swan, I guess he is. That's what makes him looking in the mirror. So I mean, that's essentially what that line is doing, isn't it? But I don't see, and of course he doesn't want to let Madeline leave, does he? No. He says you can have Matilda, so he doesn't care about Matilda, but he wants to keep Madeline. So I guess there's that, but I guess it needed fleshing out for me a bit more. That
because there's a bit in the when he's with Madeline and he says, when you save someone's life, it feels like you own them, they belong to you. Yeah, and so there is that aspect. So it's not love, but it's almost like that connection is there. So maybe it obviously doesn't completely reflect how he feels, but it's just that bond, that connection or something like that, maybe. But that's strange. So let's go over a couple of other lines. He sort of says about Bond's skills that will die with his body, whereas his will survive long after he's gone. And life is about leaving something behind, isn't it? And at that moment, he sort of strokes his hand through Matilda's hair. Again, that's quite a good line. What do you think to that? Yeah,
it's creepy and all the rest of it. Yeah, it's all right. Yeah.
You leave my baby alone and I'll leave yours. I think that's pretty cool. So basically at this point, that's where Bond, he tries to build a rapport with Safin, doesn't he? Saying that they both experienced parental loss, but neither could come to the party. Obviously, they were both really young when their parents died. but then he goes on to sort of say that everyone in the world, the main thing that they didn't have a chance, but now there's no one in the world that will get a chance with Heracles because they could just target everyone. Which is interesting. He's just trying to see if there is sort of a thread of humanity there. And then Lucifer Safin comes back with a really nice little bit of dialogue. Do you want to hit this one up, Tommy? I can see you're gagging for it.
You know what? Hold on. Let me bring it up because I was just surfing on what you were doing. Hold on a minute. Oh my God. Okay, here we are. I've got it.
Nice.
She says, "My mother slowly died as I watched her breath leaving her body. We always talk on the fight for freedom and free will. The thing that no one wants to admit is that most people want things to happen to them. We tell each other lies about the fight for free will and independence, but we don't really want that. We want to be told how to live and then die when we're not looking. People want oblivion, and a few of us are born to build it for them. So here I am, their invisible God, sneaking under their skin."
Sneaking under their skin.
You do a better Safin than I do, man, that's for sure.
I thought you were going to bust out some Safin talk then.
Yeah.
Didn't happen. So yeah, so what do you think to that? So basically people want to be told how to do. I think that's a fair enough line. And then die when they're not looking. Again, I think that's fair enough. People want oblivion, and a few of us are born to build it for them. So what do you think to that? Him saying that people want oblivion.
Well, I suppose if you ask most people when your day comes, how do you want to go?
Yeah,
it would probably be peacefully in my sleep, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the way you'd want to go, and it's going to come for all of us one day, eventually. You know, hopefully a very long time in the future. But like, so there is that. He's got a point there, so that I guess that's what he's referring to. And then I kind of like it in the sense that he's obviously a sick puppy who's like wants to give that to people and get some sort of pleasure out of it. And you know, you get that with nutters sometimes, don't they? Yeah. Where they think they're doing you a favor by cutting off your head or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you?
What nutters do you know?
Yeah. I was going to say,
who you've been hanging out with.
Yeah. But yeah. I think
I like the god complex. Like he sees himself as an invisible god sneaking under the skin, as obviously Heracles going under the skin. And then Bond comes back. He says, "You know, history isn't kind to men who play God, and you don't. We both eradicate people to make the world a better place. I just want it to be tidier." And that I think that's really cool. That's a nice sort of villain line. So he basically wants to get rid of people to make. He wants to be tidier, and using Heracles is a tidy way to do it because it's just, you know, you can just program the nanobots and etc. So that's quite cool. He goes on to say, "I want the world to evolve, yet you want it to stay the same. Let's face it, I've made you redundant." Do you want to do the Bond line that follows?
The Bond line, "I've made you redundant." No, not as long as there are people like you in the world. All you're doing is standing in a very long line of little angry men. I like it. It's that thing of when Bond often does that, doesn't he? He tries to provoke and antagonize the villain, and that's a good one. Yeah. It's like when Bond says to Trevelyan, doesn't he, "You're nothing but a common thief." And Trevelyan gets a bit uppity, doesn't he? That's a very Bond thing to do.
Similar line to Dr. No, and he sort of realizes it, doesn't he, in Dr. No, and says, "You should persist in trying to provoke me, Mr. Bond."
And He's like, "Does toppling rockets compensate for having small hands?"
Having no hands. Yeah.
Having no small hands.
What is it with you and small hands? If they're small and clammy.
I got that quite wrong, but you know what I'm saying.
That's right. Having no hands, but so I think that's cool, and that's a good Bond villain exchange.
Imagine if that was Dr. No's thing. He's just got really small hands. Yeah.
Both of them tiny little hands. So that's great. So then, so this is it. So Safin tells Bond he can leave with Mathilde. You know, this is his daughter. He can leave with her, but Madeline has to stay.
Yeah.
Bond, you know I can't do that. And Safin says, what mother wouldn't sacrifice herself for her child? Which is 100% true.
Absolutely.
Obviously, Safin threatens to harm Mathilde. Do you want to die in front of your daughter, or do you want your daughter to die in front of you? And that's good. And then this is the part where we get your favourite scene where Bond lowers his head to the floor, apologising. But that bit I do agree with you. But what I do love is the way that Safin is looking at Bond. He has Mathilde right next to his face, and he says, "Look at your father, Mathilde. This is power." And that's really nice. I think that is a great line because he's got, Bond's daughter there. And he's sort of, showing how powerful he is, the power that he has over Bond. And I love that. I think that's fantastic.
Very creepy as well. You know what? I
Very
think
creepy.
that's how I would have done it differently. Rather than have Bond go, "I'm so sorry," I would have rather Bond say, "Then take me."
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And then Bond sort of like gets down to be ready to be executed. Whips out the gun, boom, boom, boom.
Mate, that's it. Brilliant. Yeah, that's
Thanks
it. Because again, GoldenEye pre-titles when Bond sort of gives up and he comes out hands up, and the way that Trevelyan is kind of kneeling down, isn't he? Yeah, I think something like that would be great. He says, "Okay, yeah, no, take me instead." Goes to drop down, and then I'm sure he could obviously get his gun sort of pretty quick.
Whip it out. The job.
Whip it out. Yeah.
What I will say is that little maneuver he does, I really love.
Yeah.
The way it's like the accuracy of him, like, and the little side roll thing he does.
Yeah.
Every man in the room apart from Safin drops.
Yeah. Here's a question though.
Maneuver. Go on.
So he drops 1, 2, 3 guards. Do you think the reason he didn't go for Safin is because Safin wasn't armed and the other 3 guards were? So if he went for Safin, he wouldn't have time to get all 3 guards. So one of them would definitely have shot him.
Yes,
that's probably right.
The easy question is, why didn't he just shoot Safin right there and then?
But there are 3 there are guards aimed on him, and he needed to take those out first, which is fair enough. And I do love that little trap door as well. The way that they disappear and really quickly.
He's been watching Live and Let Die, hasn't he?
He has, yeah. That's a really good point, actually. Yeah, definitely Live and Let Die vibes there. But that's great. Yeah, he drops. Obviously, Safin and Mathilde disappear beneath the trapdoor in the floor. So that's kind of the Bond villain scene, the main classic exchange. Would you class it as a classic? If obviously it's hard because it's a new film, but really one of the standout pieces in any Bond film has to be the Bond villain exchange. You think of A View to a Kill, that party where he's prodding Zorin, fly casting, and that whole setup, I think it's great. Where he meets Drax for the first time, take care of Mr. Bond, see that some harm comes to him, and I think you need that sort of stuff. Do you think this in time will be seen as a classic scene, or okay? If I tell you something else, if we took out the apologetic, I'm sorry, would that raise this scene up for you like 100-fold or whatever?
No, I really don't like the apology bit, but I don't think the scene is strong enough. It looks good. I don't think the dialogue is up there with the best of them. So, for example, for me, when you have the villain face-off, you need that line, where it's like, obviously the most famous one of all. Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. You have that. That is part of everyday language in everyone in the world. If you say that to somebody, they know that's Bond, don't they? Do you know what I mean? Even if they're not a huge fan. And I would say the closest we come to it is that line where he says, history isn't kind to men who play God. Like that's a trailer moment line there, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a nice line. In obviously it wasn't the villain, but like in Spectre when you had the kite dancing in a hurricane line, that's another one that's like, oh, that's a good line, man. That I feel like that should live on for over time and stuff. I feel like you need that thing in there, and I don't think we get it here. No. Here's a question to you, right?
Yeah.
Because we've got this 5-part saga, right? Do you feel at any point any of the, like, Le Chiffre sets the template of what a Bond villain is in this imaginary Bond?
Yeah.
Do you think all of the villains and the characters all feel like they belong to that same Le Chiffre Casino Royale universe?
That's interesting. Well, Le Chiffre is quite realistic, isn't he?
Very much so.
I think Dominic Green is quite realistic.
So.
And then it starts to get fantastical a bit with Silver. and then probably even more so when you get to Blofeld and Safin to some extent.
Well,
as well.
I don't know. Blofeld
Maybe not
is
so-
pretty low key, isn't he? In the sense, he's
low
just a
key
normal
compared
dude
to
who is, you know.
But I guess being the head of the organization is where I was going. But yeah, I think, yeah,
I suppose when you look at Safin, he's got the mask on and all that kind of stuff. Does he feel like he's part of the same universe as Lashif?
He feels more like he's in the same universe as Silver.
He does, doesn't he?
Yeah.
See, I'm wondering whether those two, like, they are more like a bit. It's not that they're fantastical in the way that they, you know, they have superpowers or anything, but they're still normal human beings. But there is something about them, I guess, that they're a bit more fantastical than the others, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah. But then I guess that's the same with, you look at certain Bond films, you look at Aris Christatos, and you compare him to Hugo Drax or Karl Stromberg, there's a big difference there, isn't there?
True.
It depends on the storyline, a story that's being used in terms of what, because obviously Casino is very realistic or compared to a lot of Bond films. But I mean, I do really like it. I am a fan of Safin. I think he's a great villain. I like the backstory. I wish there's certain parts of it that were fleshed out a bit more. I think if we'd had that Bond Safin confrontation in the garden, as well as maybe something like this, that would have been good. I think they were just hampered by the amount of time. Like the script, obviously, could have been adjusted for that, but I think it's just a real shame they didn't have more time to be able to. Because I'm sure if they had more time with Rami, they could have done a few more scenes with him and Bond and a few other things, and I think that would have helped just to flesh things out.
Definitely needed to be fleshed out. Like I say, I definitely have a listen to that Empire podcast.
Yeah, I will. Yeah,
and listen specifically to what Rami has to say, because to me it does give the impression that he's trying to smooth over the fact that he didn't really know much about what Safin
which isn't his fault. It's
of
not
course
his
not.
fault.
No, of course
by any
not.
means.
No, yeah.
So what were your thoughts about, obviously, Safin then? We see him walking away with Mathilde. And at that point, one of the guards calls him Doctor. And apparently, obviously, I kept on the down low in the build-up to this, but there was that huge thing about Safin being Dr. No in the lead-up. Did you ever think he would be? Are you glad that he's not? What are your thoughts on all that? Yeah, well, there we go. Great, thanks.
There
right, on
is.
to the next one.
I'll see you tomorrow. No, I didn't think he was. I mean, there were some. I remember Rami saying in one of the early interviews that Dr. No was either his favourite Bond or his first Bond was Dr. No or something like that. And then there was a production still of him where you could see not a resemblance, but if you were you could imagine him being Dr. No if they were going to go down that route. Yeah. But for me, I was just like, why to me, that would just be weird. Why would you start now? Unless they were doing that, what's that fucking Star Wars movie where they capture the Death Star plans? Rogue One.
Rogue One, yeah.
If they were going to do the Rogue One route and tie it back into the beginning of Connery's thing in some weird way, then I could perhaps see it happening. But to me, it's like,
I'm glad they didn't. Because some people are saying, they should just bring back the next one, should have Dr. No in it, and then they should have a Goldfinger in the next one after that. And no, it just please don't go down. Obviously, it's different if it's a
Blofeld's a different story. He's the only one.
Blofeld's different, but equally as well, if they were going to do go back to the 60s or take some adaptation of the book, like a true adaptation, fine, that sort of thing. But don't do the modern things with it. Just come up with original ones.
Exactly. And to me, it was when I'd seen the mask and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, well, that's not Dr. No. If you're going to go to the effort of creating a mask and all that disfigured skin and all that kind of stuff, then you've got why would you waste that by saying that's Dr. No again?
Yeah,
and ridiculous. You could see he had fucking hands, and they were quite sizable hands as well.
Were they weren't little ones? Were they little and clammy? No? Okay, good. So what do you think of this bit? Okay, so this next bit has caused quite a bit of debate as well. So Mathilde bites Safin on the hand. He puts her down and then says basically that if she doesn't want his protection, she can go. Mathilde looks at him momentarily and then leaves, and Safin does nothing about it. He lets her go. Did you think this was odd? Do you still think this is odd? Quite a few people have mentioned this.
Yes, I think it's weird. For me,
because it's almost like she was an insurance policy again, wasn't she? Or he had the power. And
let's look at what that does, right? If he's got Matilda, the stakes are high, because it's like, what's he going to do to her? You know, that means Bond and Madeline are in a panic trying to find her and all that kind of stuff. So the tension is higher when he's got Matilda, and then he lets her go for no reason. And what does that do? It makes you go, oh, Safin must be a bit of a nice guy then. And then she toddles off straight into the arms of Bond and Madeline. And I don't think that serves a function. I don't think that does anything for us as the audience. I think that's a very odd choice to do that. What do you think? Because in my mind, the way something should flow, especially as you move to the climax, is the stakes should always be rising and rising and rising until the payoff.
Of course,
And this is some weird little thing where we haven't got to the climax yet, and then the tension is suddenly a chunk of the tension has just been let go for no reason, and I don't know why they would do that.
Well, Simon Drake commented on this. He thought there was an element of Safin wanting a family, as his were killed, which is something I guess we mentioned earlier. And he said it felt like he was going to adopt Matilda, obviously keeping Madeline, who he's got that connection to have his own family. But when Matilda rejects him for her real family, he kind of casts her off to be alone. And maybe it was Matilda's rejection that made him realise that she would never come to love him or want to be with him. So it's like, right, okay then, you go. And there is an element to an understanding in that. But equally, if he had kept on to her, either Bond or Madeline or Nomi, maybe even Nomi manages to rescue her, and then it's Nomi who's got Matilda, and Bond and Madeline have to then find her or something. I don't know, but I don't know. I
just don't know, man.
I think they kind of just basically needed her to not be with Safin. And that is the way that they came up with me.
Because, that might have been his motivations, but none of that was ever expressed to us. Do you know what I mean? As the audience. No. So it's, again, that's why we needed that villain speech where he's saying,
exactly.
Like, I always wanted to have a family, Mr. Bond, and now I have yours. Ma! You know what I mean? You needed that.
Mate, again, I'm signing up for next one.
Yeah, baby. So I just don't know. I think I struggle to remember a Bond film in recent times with this many questions sort of open and unanswered. Do you know what I mean? Of course, in every Bond film, there are things where I'm like, well, it doesn't quite make sense, but fuck it, we'll go with it.
Yeah.
This one, there seems to be quite a lot. And and that's definitely one of them for me. So I don't know why that's a thing. Like for me, ultimately, Bond does his little flip thing, boom, 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 drops the 3 guards. Safin leaves her there and jumps out the window or whatever he does, goes down his little trapdoor and doesn't take her with him if you need Matilda to be with Bond.
Yeah.
Just letting her go like that, don't know why. Weird choice in my book.
I do agree it's very strange. I do see the sort of potential of the family side of things, but it's never mentioned or fleshed out. So I remember seeing it for the first time just thinking, well, that's a bit odd.
Yeah.
Why did he? And as an audience member, if you don't know the motivation behind something, it's very tricky to kind of go along with it, I guess. And I think that was the case with them. Well, okay, so this next bit, so we're basically going to talk about Saffin's plan. So after that, as Safin walks off, he mentions our first buyers are arriving. So we see on Q's scanner that there are these 3 ships arriving. So first buyers for Heracles. So at this point, I'd like to see what your thoughts are on Saffin's plan. Now that obviously Mr. White died, Blofeld is dead, Spectre is effectively gone. He's obviously got the island. He's got Heracles. He's mass producing this bioweapon. Is it all about power? Is it now, do you think, purely financial that he can sell it, and or is it a combination of both? So he's basically got the deadliest weapon in the world, so everyone is going to want it. So does he enjoy the power of having something that everyone else wants, and he wants to kind of show off, and or is it like, right, I can make some money out of this, because he's obviously must have had a lot of money to set everything up and go along. So what are your thoughts on this?
Is my thoughts on that, because I don't really know. So obviously he likes a bit of power because we've had that "this is power" bit with Matilda.
Definitely.
So he gets off on that a bit, obviously, and if you've got the most powerful weapon ever, you might as well make a few squid while you're at it. Game on.
Might as well. Yeah.
Let's do that. But let's not forget, how easy would it be for that weapon to then be used against him at some point?
This is what I thought. If he was going to sell it, surely he would somehow find a way to ensure that his DNA couldn't be replicated or involved somehow in the weapon. Because the other thing I thought was, when they saw that simulation in the lab and Bond says to Naomi, look, they're going to kill millions, look at all this. Do you think that, because Obruchev says they have big plans, do you think that was part of their big plan, or do you think that was purely a simulation to show prospective buyers how deadly Heracles is? Look, if you buy this, this is what it could do. Or do you think that's what they actually intended to do?
I think in hindsight, maybe that's a demonstration, because if you were going to do that, why would you have the buyers coming on their way?
Yeah.
And to me, the buyers, I think, and I know I'm nitpicking a lot with this last sequence, but I think this is perhaps where most of the holes are. I think the buyers are just there as a mechanism to have the countdown, the ticking clock. You have to launch the missiles now, otherwise they're going to get here.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I feel like I prefer him just being a lunatic who wanted to release this thing on the population rather than selling it to somebody. I guess, it's there's so many questions that I'm not sure.
No, I'm the same with you on this, because I think they want that ticking clock sort of thing happening, and other buyers, because as soon as a buyer buys it and leaves the island, then they can't, it's going to be trickier to destroy everything. But then there's the other side of it. He wanted to be tidier. He wanted to eradicate. It's almost like he wanted to cut away society's dead flesh, as Brad Whitaker might say. You get the impression that Safin, he feels that what he's doing is for the greater good of the people on the planet, even though obviously he's looking to kill a load of people. In his eyes, obviously, when we mentioned his name in one of the previous episodes, he thinks he's bringing light to the world by improving it in his own sort of misguided way. So I was trying to think, okay, so what potentially could he do? He might selectively preserve sort of people who basically almost like breeding out disease. So if you have people disease or undesirable characteristics, could almost like target those to kill those out, to make the human population
a bit Hugo Draxy.
Exactly, you've got that sort of Aryan style, and conversely, like destroy those that have bad and preserve those that supposedly have good hereditary traits. That was one aspect I thought. Or maybe he was looking to save mankind and put himself forward as a new leader. If he eradicated the current leaders by destroying, potentially also could be destroying all the terrorism, so there'd be no one else left to terrorize. It'd just be him. Or he might want to save the world by, obviously there's an overpopulation issue with the world, with resources, food, water, everything like that. Maybe he's hoping to make the world a better place by just decreasing the world's population, but the thing is, all of these ideas individually could work, but you needed to have that little hint to say, this is what I'm doing. This is it, isn't it?
That's it. I think Safin and his motivations are unfortunately really undercooked, and for me, I'm confused. It's like he wants the world to be tidier, but instead of being the one to administer the poison, the virus, he's selling it to the highest bidder. To me, those two things.
I don't think the buyer's thing works. I think that, like you said, was purely in to get the. It doesn't make sense, that whole buyer's thing, unless because.
See, I mean, in my mind, the thing, okay, if this island is in disputed territories between Japan and Russia, which when you look at it, I brought it up on Google Maps, and it is precisely that. Hold on, let me bring it up.
Precisely between the two, you mean?
Yeah, look, I mean,
let's have a look.
Hold on, can you see that? Is that?
Yeah, there we go.
There you go. Look, there's Japan down there.
Kuril Islands, that's it.
That string of islands,
isn't it?
And then you've got Russian territory right there on that sort of archipelago thing hanging down. So if you're in disputed waters or whatever, and all of a sudden you've got Russian and Japanese warships heading towards the island, surely that's enough. The buyers thing seems like an extra detail that wasn't needed.
Yeah,
for me.
yeah, I agree. So what we're saying is it was a little cloudy, a few lines of dialogue, the villain's plan speech, and it could have covered a lot of these sort of uncertainties, maybe. But I guess the flip side of that is it does leave it open to interpretation. So some of those ideas that we had about, eradicating certain types of the population or whatever, it allows people to then come up with their own thing. Right, that's what I think he's done. But I still think it needed one or two little bits to help you in that direction. Okay, so we'll move on from Saffin's Plan. But again, anyone listening, if you've got an idea of what you think Saffin's Plan is or was, then obviously let us know. So at this point, Nomi has Obruchev in the factory, in the laboratory. A load of guards turn up. She leaves with him, and he threatens to exterminate everyone of African descent, basically. He's like saying, right, I'm going to wipe your sort of race off. And then she does do you know what time it is? It's time to die. And then kicks him off the gantry. He falls into the acidic pool. And obviously, I'm not overly keen on that line. What are your thoughts?
No, me either.
Not good?
No. No.
No. Yeah, go on.
It's better than your mama, but
that's true.
It's all right.
It's very, very forced. Very forced, and it's a bit lame. Like the whole death, I think is cool because we saw one of the workers obviously fall into the acidic pool early and sort of get dissolved, and the same thing happens to Obruchev. He falls in, and I guess it's a combination of the acidity, the poison, and the nanobots. If they're all in there, it's too many. Like you said, too many chefs, isn't it? It's too much going on. Yeah. And obviously that's what's getting to him. But I think the deaths are pretty cool. Then we cut back. So Bond and Madeline, they're running through the facility. Obviously they hear Mathilde. She appears from the hiding place, and you can see obviously they're super relieved. Q is up in the plane, getting buzzed by two Russian MiGs. Tanner tells them the Navy, the Japanese, the Russians are all breathing down their neck, but M tells them not to do anything just yet. Obviously, they're waiting to hear from Bond. And now there is a great bit where Bond reunites with Nomi, and he gets that bit where he says, Madeline, Mathilde, they're my... And he mouths family. And I think that's a beautiful moment. I really do. Because you can see the sort of shock in his face when he's saying the line, but it seems to work so well. Mm-hmm. Did you like that little moment? I thought it was great. Yeah, that was nice. Yeah. And Bond basically informs them, okay, this island is a manufacturing site for Heracles. M informs Bond about the international attention they're receiving. And this is a part where Bond, Madeline, Mathilde and Nomi reach the submarine pen. They board the boat. I love Bond giving his sweater to Mathilde. I thought that was lovely, really, really cute. Madeline and Bond kiss before Nomi chucks the detonator to Bond. And then the boat drifts off into the bright white light with Madeline and Bond looking at one another for the very last time. And
that is quite a moving moment. And I think, because especially when you know what's coming, that's a nice little ending. And I suppose you get those two, you get those two little glimpses of what Bond would be like as a dad. He's cutting up the apple for her earlier on. Yeah,
that's cute. I like
and then there's the there's this giving her the jumper and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's a nice little touch. Now, you know what? I think maybe we should because there's so much more to talk about. I think maybe we should put a little pin in it today and then come back tomorrow for one more stab at the very end of the film, because there's more to talk about than you think, isn't there, when you get deep in the weeds of all this stuff. Yeah. So this is, I think we can hold our tears back until tomorrow when the end finally comes.
It's a nice little moment though, because the light is so bright, isn't it? It's almost like a heavenly light, isn't it? Like a holy light that they're going out, and you just see them look at each other, and obviously for the last time yet, the audience don't know that, and they don't know that yet. So I think that's a good time to call it for today.
Big style. Okay, all right. Get prepared for tomorrow, everybody. Get your tissues out.
Yeah, easy.
Sorry, I didn't go there. That was Chris that time.
I know you were leading me there, Tom. You were leading me there.
I'm usually the one that leads it down that path, but I didn't this time. I was being absolutely innocent, and you got your mind in the gutter.
Yeah, I bet you were
to blame for that. Anyway. Somebody who really likes the ending to this film. Anyway, we will return tomorrow for the last edition of our review before we turn it over to some listener discussion on Friday, some listener talking points on Friday. So until then, I've been Tom Sears.
I've been Chris Wright, and we'll return tomorrow, and that's with our very last movie review episode.
Absolutely. We will see you then, everybody.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Good night.